Welcome to the People Dividend Podcast with Mike Horne. I am absolutely delighted to have in our virtual studio today, and for all of you watching on YouTube, in this modality, Dr. Randy Ross. And what makes me interested in Dr. Randy and what will make you interested in Dr. Randy, I hope, is that he is a globally celebrated authority on corporate culture. And he's pairing his passion not only to get the most out of people and organizations, but to revolutionize businesses. And who wouldn't want this in today's economy, in today's marketplaces? He really works at helping his clients and others to fortify their emotional health. Maybe we'll call it emotional intelligence, but we'll think about how he fosters a sense of well-being in the workplace. And not only is Dr. Randy known for his best-selling books, Fireproof Happiness, Relationomics, and Remarkable, he has been in the shoes as an executive. So he speaks not only from his heart, but from his experience. His client list is quite incredible. It's one I think we'd all like to have if you were on this side of the table in the podcast. He includes GE Appliances, McDonald's, Panasonic. And what I'm really looking forward to digging into with Dr. Randy today is his groundbreaking formula that unravels the mysteries of employee retention and profitability. And for all of us in the audience today, we know how important talent retention is in today's economy. And he's going to bring not only his wisdom in his compelling messages, but what I know from meeting him earlier in advance of the show, this sense of infectious humor that he has. And it's really quite magnetic. It's great to be in your presence, Dr. Randy. And again, once again, welcome to the People Dividend Podcast with Mike Horne. Why don't you tell our audience a few words about yourself, or say it in a few words about who you are and what you do?
Well, Mike, thank you for the introduction. It's great to be with you and an honor to be on your podcast. And after hearing that introduction, I can't wait to hear what I have to say. So this will be interesting. But as far as background is concerned, I spent the first part of my career working extensively for nonprofit organizations. And that was an interesting period of time. We saw community involvement. We did a lot of great good. We were part of some movements that I'm very proud of. But the thing that I learned during that period of time was what compels people to get engaged emotionally and bring their best effort to any endeavor. And you think about it from a nonprofit standpoint, you're dealing with volunteers. And so what compels a volunteer to give their time, their energy, and their resources to any particular cause or worthy endeavor? And it was fun for me to be able to create movements of good in those types of settings, because you had to tap into passion. You had to tap into purpose. You had to tap into fulfillment and meaning in a worthy cause. And then when I made the transition over into the for-profit space, I was aghast, if not appalled, at the research that tells us that Gallup's done a great job over the last 2 decades of telling us that right now we're almost at an all-time high. And yet, at engagement, only 33% of the American workforce is what they would call actively engaged, meaning that they bring passion, enthusiasm, excitement to the work experience. So think about that, Mike. Only 33%. That means 67% of the workforce, they don't want to go to work. They're not excited about it. It's something they have to do, not something that they get to do. And globally, it's even worse than that. And so I started thinking and contemplating years ago when we started Remarkable, what would it look like if we could help organizations tap into this discretionary effort that people have in the margins of life? And what if we could even create atmospheres that they got excited about coming to work, that we know that happy people do better work, and we know that people are more productive when they do work with people that they like. So why can't we create that? within organizational life. And so we began to really dive in and dig into this whole idea of how do we improve the culture to create inspirational environments where people can thrive.
Well, and if anyone needs confirmation of Dr. Randy's assertions, what I would encourage you to do is visit one of our earlier podcasts with the chief data scientist at Gallup, who happens to be a friend of, and I've worked with him on a number of projects, the State of the American Workforce. These numbers are just staggering. Yeah. And what I am most interested is, how do you create these, we all want people to bring their best to what they do, to bring their best to the organization. How do you create these, is it moments of goodness or movements of goodness? Can you say some things about that, Dr. Randy?
Oh, absolutely. Because this strikes at the very core and essence of what we talk about. And for me, I like to introduce principles from the field of applied axiology. And I don't know how many of your listeners.
What's that?
Exactly. I don't know how many of your listeners are familiar, but it's a very, very powerful field of study, something that I've been enamored with for decades now. I'm a geek on philosophy. And axiology, applied axiology, is a strain of philosophy that talks about values, value constructs, and value creation. I'm intrigued. We often hear talk, and it's often just rhetoric about creating value, adding value, bringing value to endeavors. And people are always
so when we hit
about
the snooze button, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's associated with great customer service.
Right.
Create value for people. But the challenge is most people don't know how to do that. So axiology, at its heart, at its essence, is about defining and measuring good. More specifically, how do you create movements of good in organizational life? And so there's some basic principles from the field of axiology. We talk about these, actually unpack them in a leadership parable in our book called Remarkable. But it's this whole idea of how do you create a remarkable culture? And there are ways to do that. There are principles that you can apply, and there are practices that you can begin to deploy within the organization in order to achieve some stellar results. So that's what we talk about. Axiology is really, in my estimation, the best explanation of human motivational behavior, particularly in the marketplace.
There's so many things to unpack there, Dr. Randy, and what you have to offer our audience. As a person who's led a number of great place to work campaigns in organizations and led those organizations to be on the Fortune list of great places to work, I've moved away from that concept in my work and have moved into thinking about where do we create places where people can do their best work. And yet, I think you're offering a distinction that's so important that takes people beyond the great place to work. Tell us about the remarkable organization, the remarkable workplace. It's such a wonderful concept that I haven't heard before. I haven't heard it illustrated.
Oh, well, let's talk about that, because we define a remarkable culture. Let's back up. Let's define culture, because there's a lot of talk in the workplace about culture, but what exactly is it? And we define it in our world. Culture is the collective expression of the values, the beliefs, and the behaviors that individuals bring to any endeavor. Now, to make it simple, it's how we play in the sandbox together, but those three components are vital. It's the values, the beliefs, and the behaviors. And we spend a great amount of time talking about people's behavior, how we want you to behave, how we want you to perform, what objectives we want you to hit, the things we want you to do. But if that's not undergirded by a belief system, a strong belief system, then people won't do those things that you're asking them to do because they don't believe in it. And behind the beliefs are values, which are the foundation, the underpinning of all of that. And so here's what I tell leaders all the time. One of the strategic elements of good leadership is connecting personal passion and personal values to corporate objectives. If you can't do that, if you can't make that connection, then you're renting people's hands and you're renting their head, but you don't have their heart. And discretionary effort lies in the margins of life when it comes to passion and purpose. And here's how I like to say it, back to Gallup's research. If If 51% of the American workforce is not engaged and 16 to 70% is actively disengaged, what would it mean to your organization? That's the average. What would it mean to your organization if you could just move 10% from not engaged to actively engaged? Just 10% of your workforce. It would produce exponential returns for the organization. And so that's what we talk about when we're talking about cultivating an inspirational environment. And we define a remarkable culture as a place that has a trilogy. It's a place where people believe the best in one another. They want the best for one another. And so therefore they expect the best from one another. And those three elements, the first one is trust. We believe the best in one another. That's high level of trust. We want the best for each other, which is a high level of compassion and connectivity. And the third is we expect the best from each other, which is accountability. And organizations, again, do a great job when it comes to accountability, not always a great job when it comes to trust and connection and compassion. And so we've got to get all three of those elements right. And we can do that by applied axiology and taking those principles and practically applying those to the workforce.
Trust is so important. My most recent book was Integrity by Design, How to Work and Live Authentically. And, people ask me sometimes, well, is it okay to tell a lie? And I say, well, why are you asking me that? But what I do know is that in the absence of trust, people will not think you have integrity. And without integrity, people will not trust you. And once trust is lost or it's diminished, it's so hard to recover. So I really like this trinity, this trilogy of work that is so important that you've been promoting and helping small and big organizations alike achieve. I want to talk a little bit about values. Last week, I facilitated a strategic offsite for president of a company, his team, and we spun a lot. The group spun a lot on, what's our mission? What's our purpose? And one of the bright participants in the room made an observation. Well, we've never really talked about our values. And I think that led to a lot of the spin. It led to a lot of the creation. Now, you and I both know that there are a couple of values that many companies adopt, and they become words in the hall rather than words on the floor. And those are the values of passion, integrity, courage. There was at one time when over half of the Fortune 500 had those as corporate values: passion, integrity, and courage. Tell us about, values and how you make those real in your client organizations. I assume it has something to do with axiology as well.
Oh, it does. Absolutely. Because again, when you're talking about axiology, values form the foundation. That's where you have to start. And to your point, it's not enough to put a list of values on a plaque in the lobby. The two things that I do when I go into an organization and they say, hey, let us tell you about our culture. And I say, no, let me walk your halls for an hour and let me talk to people and I'll come back and tell you about your culture. I don't need for you to tell me, because can people articulate the values? In other words, are they not only embraced, but are they embodied? And more importantly, are they embedded within the life of the organization where everybody buys into it? They believe in it. It's definitional, but it's aspirational as well. And more than that, do we live these out when push comes to shove? Because values always compete. And when values compete, which one comes out on top? So you have to have not only values, but you have to have your values in a particular order. So how do they most naturally reflect who you are? If people walk through the lobby and they look at the values on your plaque or your board or your signage and they roll their eyes, I can assure you it's not embedded within the life of the organization. And those kinds of values that are just thrown up are not ever going to be foundational for daily decisions within the life of the organization. So it's got to start there. You can't be on mission and have a strong mission until, first of all, your values are firmly established and everyone buys into that, because that's where there's a word we use in Remarkable, value centricity. And don't go look it up because we made it up. That's the benefit of being an author. You can make up words. But value centricity just means that our values are aligned and they create a circuit through which energy can flow to light up the world. When we're all on the same page, when my personal values align with the values of the organization, then you don't have to light a fire underneath me, because all you have to do is fan the flame within me and turn me loose to do what I'm wired to do. And this is where so many organizations get it wrong. They don't make such a strong statement about their values that it serves as a magnet. Mike, a magnet both attracts and it repels. And there's so many organizations that their values and their mission are not strong enough to repel the wrong kind of people. And so they get people in the organization whose values are not aligned with theirs, and they wonder why they have problems, or they wonder why they have a difficult time with motivation, or they have a difficult time with engagement. It's because from the very beginning, they did not clearly articulate, this is who we are, this is what we stand for, this is what we're committed to do, and this is how we're going to do it. If that resonates with people, then you don't have to recruit anymore. You just select the best of the people who come your way. You don't have to go out and try to convince people to be a part of it, because they will want to join your organization.
If you're watching me on YouTube, watching Dr. Randy Ross and me on YouTube, you can see me. I'm nodding my head in violent agreement with Dr. Randy Ross today, author of Remarkable and other great books. Because a lot of folks know that I have a big background in survey-guided feedback, survey-guided research. I managed teams of industrial organizational psychologists in big organizations. So a lot of clients come to me, and one of the initial things they say is, well, let's take a survey. And I say, oh, you got to be kidding me. Why don't you just get out of your chair and ask people some questions? And that's what I love about the approach that Dr. Randy Ross and his team takes at Remarkable. Dr. Randy, what I want to talk a little bit about with you, because I love where you're going around being aligned with values and this, that they should serve not only as attraction, but they should serve as ways to screen out people. But one of the things that you've done so successfully is you've talked about, the quiet quitting movement, and how to create this irresistible workplace culture, which I think is one of the foundations of your work, that not only attracts, but retains bright, talented people. If you were to offer some advice to our audience around retaining, attracting and retaining talent, in addition to what you've already said about trust and values, what would you tell our audience? What would you describe to them so that they can be in touch with you for additional information?
Well, what I would tell them about the organization first is that you have to invest deeply in your people. And I know this may sound crazy, but it amazes me how when push comes to shove, or the economy turns south, or people are afraid of a recession, some of the first budgets to get cut are the people-related budgets. Training and development goes by the wayside. Organizations don't invest in their people. That's the exact time they need to be investing more heavily in their people, because those are periods of stress and anxiety and uncertainty. And those are the times they need to be helping them to have a solid emotional foundation. The best organizations I know are counterintuitive. When the market is doing one thing, they do just the opposite. When people are cutting back on investing in their workforce, they do just the opposite. I think that if you want to make a statement to your people, it needs to be, we believe so much in your success that we're going to invest heavily, that you're going to be able to be successful wherever you go. But we're going to love you so deeply that you're never going to want to go anywhere. When people feel valued, they do better work. When people feel appreciated and affirmed, they stick around. When they enjoy what I call a relationally rich environment, then not only do they grow and are they sharpened, but they bring their best self to the table. So when we're talking about these concepts, we're also talking about environments of good coaching, of open loops of continuous feedback, so that anybody at any level can offer anything to anyone at any time. Those are your best organizations, because they become self-coaching and self-correcting. So that's what we like to help organizations get to, is a place where they truly inspire people to bring their best to work every day.
And I suppose that these are all contributors to these movements of good or movements of goodness that you described.
Absolutely. Yeah. All of those are factors. And so what we do is we go into organizations with a keynote, sometimes to kick things off, but we have workshops. We like to embed ourselves in the learning and development, in the training of the organization to help them not only embrace these, but begin to embed these within the life of their organization. And so we have workshops that we provide. We obviously have a lot of content, both digitally and through our books that we make available to organizations. And that's how we enjoy seeing organizations move toward having healthier cultures.
Well, that's wonderful. When we kicked off the People Dividend podcast today, Dr. Ross, we talked about emotional health and emotional intelligence. And one of the points that you have in your work is that emotional health and well-being helps to unleash the full potential of a team. And you offer some practical strategies about how to create these supportive environments. Could you give some examples or provide some examples or some coaching points for those in our audience?
Oh, sure. And I wrote a book back during COVID, Mike, that was entitled Fireproof Happiness.
Oh, do you have a copy? Let's see it.
Yeah, I don't have it here handy. I should have some on my work belt, but
we'll have it in the show notes for everyone. It'll be in the show notes on today's podcast so that you can, I assume, get it at Amazon, who sells all of our books.
There you go. Look, there you go. That's it.
There you go. Wonderful.
Fireproof Happiness, wherever fine books are sold. We were honored recently that this book it's chosen as Book of the Year with online book clubs. In the realm of self-help and psychology. So we were very pleased with that. But I talk in Fireproof Happiness about building resilience in the workforce. Coming off of World War II and during the whole Cold War period, the Army War College came up with an acronym called VUCA. You may be familiar with it, Mike.
Oh, sure.
VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And it was the way the Army War College described this Cold War era and the post-Cold War era. I think it's interesting because you could use that same acronym to describe the workforce today. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. When you have a situation like that, people suffer from anxiety. They suffer from stress. They suffer from uncertainty. They don't know where the world is going to go. We've got political unrest. We've had racial unrest. We've had economic uncertainty. The landscape coming out of COVID has still not settled down. And now we've got a totally different work atmosphere that's going to be comprised going forward with hybrid work. How do we get people to work together when they're geographically dispersed or they're not coming into the office? All of those create anxiety. Am I out of sight, out of mind? If organizations don't invest heavily in building a sense of resilience within their people, then what's going to happen is the silent killer is what's leading to quiet quitting. People are silently quitting. They're saying, if the organization is not willing to invest in me, then why should I invest in the organization? And so they're doing the least amount necessary to fly under the radar without getting detected and without getting fired. They're trading the time card for a paycheck. And that's all that most of the people are doing. Because they're saying,
so fascinating to me. I'm watching some of the clients with whom I work. You've got a certain portion of the leadership team who they're beating their chests and they're saying everybody's got to get back to work. And yet there is a stream of thought, a stream of work that says the 4-day work week is on the horizon in the United States. It's one of the top issues that chief people officers are dealing with now is, are we going to move to a 4-day work week? What will that mean for compensation and rewards? Do you have any comments on this tension about being in the workplace, about being physically present in the workplace, about how does that show up? What can we make out of remarkable workplaces in your view, given this debate and challenge that's going on?
It's not as complicated as we sometimes make it.
Nice.
Let me make it really, really simple. Do you trust your people to do good work? And are you investing heavily in them so that they're going to be successful? If you don't trust your people, why not? Why not? Because that's a huge issue. If you don't trust your people, then chances are they probably don't trust you either. And so now we get back to a culture conversation. Have you created an environment where you believe the best in, you want the best for, and you expect the best from? Yeah, we probably are moving to a 4-day work week. Now that's going to make a lot of executives freak out. But the question is, if we invest heavily in our people and we trust our people to do good work, if we don't, we've mishired. But if we do, and they do the work in 4 days, then celebrate that. What many organizations are finding, when you've built the right culture and you get the right people and you've got top talent, they can do more in 4 days than most other groups can do in 6 days, if there's a high level of what we're talking about. On the other hand, if you've always had a churn and burn atmosphere, if you've got a toxic environment where you can't keep people, guess what? People are voting with their feet. No matter how much you beat your chest, you can have them work 7 days a week and you're not going to be as productive as if you had an organization with a strong culture that trusted its people. So my question is, do you trust them and are you investing in them? If you don't trust them and you're not investing in them, you can try to drive people and dictate people with fear all day long, but it's going to be short-lived. It's not going to last because people will ultimately vote with their feet. And so my question to you is, what's the turnover in the life of your organization? And if you want the turnover to slow down and you want to start retaining top talent, you need to be addressing culture.
I love that. And I know that people can certainly learn more in one of your keynotes or through the work that you and your team do. The topic, I think, is this the silent killer. I mean, how do you give your employees a voice and value their contributions? I mean, it's one thing to say, let's create a speak up culture. It's another thing to think about, well, let's create a listen up culture too. So how do you go about, in a few words, a few ideas, it's a big, complicated question about creating an inclusive culture that fosters open communication, that amplifies diverse perspectives and fuels innovation, the key to all success?
Well, let me take you back to Fireproof Happiness. So let me just talk to you about the link between hope and happiness. Everybody wants to be happy. And we want to be happy in our personal lives. We want to be happy in our work environment. Everybody is in pursuit of happiness. But I love what John Templeton said. John Templeton said, happiness pursued eludes, but happiness given returns, which again strikes right at the heart of principles of axiology. But the idea is we need to infuse the workforce with hope to elevate performance, because hope, it's something that everyone would agree is absolutely essential for the human spirit to survive and to soar and to thrive. But most people don't know how to define it. So let me give you my definition of hope based upon the research and the writing from Fireproof Happiness. Hope is a dynamic motivational system tied to inspirational goal setting. In other words, happiness comes in pursuit of a worthy goal that you've set forth as a desired destination. It's not actually even getting there that creates the happiness. It's striving toward a worthy cause. And most people in the work environment don't feel like they're striving toward a worthy cause. They don't feel like they're changing the world. They don't feel like they're making a difference. They feel like their contribution is nondescript, that it's not really changing society or making a positive impact in the world. And here's what I like to say. People love to do good business with businesses that do good. People love to be a part of working for businesses that do good. So here's the question. What good does your organization do? It gets back to some principles of axiology. And I would ask the question, what's the purpose of business? Most people would say to make money. I disagree. I think the purpose of business is to improve the human condition. The purpose of business is to make a difference in the world. The purpose of business is to solve a problem and make life better. Here's what I know to be true. People will gladly pay full price for those things that they deem bring true value to life. And so it gets back to this whole idea. If all you're doing is pushing products and selling processes that drive to the bottom line, making a buck, if you're not actively emotionally engaging your people in a movement that you truly believe in, that's changing humanity, that's offering something of value, and it's not necessarily in what you do, it's in how you do it, then you're always going to have challenges trying to solicit the right kind of people to join your organization, and you're going to have a hard time keeping them around.
It is, counterintuitive to consider what you are saying. And before we wrap up, I have one question, which is to extend the ideas about putting people before profits. I once had a client who told me, Mike, if we could figure out how to make money without people, we'd do it. I just sort of, laughed to myself because I believe that, probably like you, that people are the heart of the enterprise. Without people, you can't do anything. So just as a way of beginning to wrap up, thinking about this before we tell people about how to be in touch with you, how to be in contact with you, could you comment on these ideas of superior service and how we do create raving fans? I think you've already given us some ideas, but what else would you add about creating raving fans by putting people before profits, this counterintuitive approach that you're pioneering?
Well, it's funny because, whoever that individual was that said, if we could figure out a way to make money without people, we would do it. My question to him would be, well, then who would buy it?
Perfect.
Because people buy it. You could say organizations buy it, but it's the people in the organizations that buy it. So you can't make money without people because you have no client base. And here's the thing, your client base will be treated the same way that your employee base is treated. So if you want great customer service begins with great employee experience. You can't go out and market your service or your product to the community until, first of all, you've marketed it internally. Because if you don't have raving fans internally that are supportive and behind it and saying, we got the best situation out there, you're never going to be able to convince anybody outside your walls of that fact because it's not going to happen. It won't be supported by your internal crew. So organizations need to come back to the basics. And we say this all the time. It seems like common sense, but unfortunately, it's not common practice. But all of these principles that we espouse, in axiology and creating movements of good in organizational life, and how do you get people to bring their best to the table? How do you create relationally rich environments? Everything hinges on relationships because healthy business is driven by healthy relationships. So if you don't have an atmosphere in your organization that's relationally rich, don't expect for your customer service to be great because it won't be. It all comes back to, are you investing heavily in your people so that they believe in what you're doing?
Of course. And one of my clients asked once if I could correlate their net promoter score with employee engagement. They had been working in Gallup, and I sort of was puzzled by it. I was intrigued by it and began the work. But I always thought, isn't that kind of crazy? Don't you think that if you have happy employees, you're going to have happy and loyal customers? And do we really need a study for that? But, if you want to quantify the data, I'm here to, assist you and help you to do that. And it's really wonderful to hear the comments that you, Dr. Randy Ross, offer and to think about this fireproof happiness and how that gets created in organizations by the actions that people take every day and by the investments they make in people, regardless of the methods or pathways that you can help people to understand that, whether it's through the principles of axiology or remarkable workplaces. It really offers such a great framework. And I suppose as a keynoter, it would really help to create this unlocking of human potential that exists in every organization and that turns people into happy customers. So, Dr. Ross, if people wanted to be in touch with you, if our members, if our listeners wanted to know more about Dr. Randy Ross and what you've been doing to create culture and hope in organizations, how would they get in touch with you? And of course, we'll have this in our show notes as well.
Well, they can obviously reach out to us at our website, which is very simple. It's drrandyross.com, just DR, no period, drrandyross.com. You can look us up on social media as well and reach out to us and connect with us that way. Or if they want to reach out directly, just rr@drrandyross.com is my personal email, and I'd be happy to field any questions that your listening audience may have or talk to them about potentially doing work with their teams. But, it's so much fun to travel the country and speak to organizations that really get it and they understand the power of culture. And we're privileged to be able to work with some great organizations that do a good job in that realm. But I would challenge everyone to stop and reflect upon what difference would it make if you could reduce your turnover by 10%, or what would happen if you could get 10% of your people out of that non-engaged category into the actively engaged category? If you could tap into that's the greatest resource I think any organization has, is that untapped latent potential that latent energy that lies in the margins of life of their people, that they could extract. People could voluntarily give that if they just felt so inspired to do so. And that would make an extreme difference for most organizations.
Well, you have inspired me today, and I hope and anticipate that for everyone in our audience, this is one of the podcast episodes that they're going to want to pass along to others if they are really sincere about creating a compelling culture by growing leaders worth following. So once again, I encourage everyone to visit drrandyross.com to be in touch with him via email, rr@drrandyross.com. I think we'll get you there. And once again, thank you.
Great to hang out with you, Mike.
Thank you so much. And until the next episode of the People Dividend, stay well.